Senator Duckworth, you introduced this bill with fellow Democrat Senator Tammy Baldwin. There has been a slew of bipartisan legislation under President Biden, like the PACT Act, the CHIPS and Science Act, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, and even your Protecting Moms Who Served Act, just to name a few. Does this legislation have bipartisan support?
It does, and we're working to get co-sponsors on it. We just wanted to make sure we introduced it as quickly as possible because the FAA is conducting these tests, and we wanted to send a message to the FAA that this was in the works. And I will work to get Republican co-sponsors on the bill.
And what overall has been the response to your legislation?
Well, there's been two main groups. The aircraft manufacturers are opposed to it, and we've gotten some criticism saying that, well, it's not ethically responsible to put people with disabilities on an aircraft to conduct an evacuation test because you may harm them. It's not ethical to put infants into aircraft as you're conducting these tests because the infants could be harmed. And my response to those folks is, we do this all the time when we test the safety of a car seat. It's not ethical to put an infant into a car seat and crash a car at 35 miles an hour towards a brick wall to see whether or not the car seat is safe. But we use crash test dummies for this purpose. We use human analog, we do all sorts of ways to test. And all I'm saying is do that. Put crash test dummies in aircraft. Simulate somebody having a broken leg and needing crutches, or somebody like me who uses a wheelchair needing to be evacuated. And you can do that without actually putting a person with a disability or an infant onto the aircraft. You can simulate it. Do that. That'll serve the flying public. And then the other bigger group of people are people who really truly support the bill. I've gotten endorsements from aviation groups, flight attendants groups, as well as from groups like the AARP, the Paralyzed Veterans of America. Captain Sully, Sullenberger, the Miracle on the Hudson pilot, has endorsed my legislation. Now, he's a guy who knows about having to evacuate an aircraft quickly under very extreme circumstances, and he thinks this is a good bill.
And I think it took him 3 minutes to evacuate his plane total. So that doesn't meet that 90-second benchmark. So that's a great voice of support there.
Yes, it is. And it is really a wide range of support for this bill. It's not just aviation industry insiders like flight attendants and ground crews and the like, but it is a wide variety of folks who are interested in the well-being of the general public, like the AARP, like veterans groups.
Has the FAA responded?
No, not yet, but we will continue to push them to update their regulation and their standards, even without us having to pass this bill.
Mark Baer, CEO of Aviation Manuals, told Forbes that Congress has been, quote, notoriously poor at funding the FAA at an adequate level. I want your response to that.
Well, I would agree with that. I think FAA needs to have better funding so that they can have all of the inspections that they need to do the inspections, that we certainly need to provide FAA with the resources to do the job that they need to do. And we're looking in this year's budget to make sure we fund them appropriately. On the other hand, there has been criticism of the FAA, for example, with the Boeing MAX 8, where they've gotten a little bit too cozy with industry. And too often they have deferred to aircraft manufacturers and to commercial aviation folks in influencing their decision making, and that's really not the role of the FAA. The role of the FAA is to be an independent organization that ensures the safety of flying for the American people.
Senator Duckworth, we will continue to keep our eye on your legislation. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me on.